Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fixing the Paradox. Today we are here with Connor Sears of America. Connor, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Connor Sears from the United States.
And we have Tom Bainbridge, the leader of the BTN Academy, am I right?
Yeah, so I have been podcasting a while, so I'm an archer, but only tangentially. I'm actually a nutrition and fitness person, so that's me, I suppose.
Figured Tom could shed a light on the physical and mental benefits of archery, as well as Connor being a high-ranked American archer, and then I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, so I don't know Connor, and I would like to know a bit more about Connor, because I don't know who the hell I'm talking about, and I've heard that you're quite good at archery. So, other than being from the States, who are you, dude?
Well, I have shot competitive archery for about 8 years now, I'd say. Try to travel international when I can over to Europe. And that's basically me. just shooting when I can.
Am I picking up like the world's thickest Texas accent as well?
Yeah.
Nice. How long have you been shooting?
Roughly, I think about 7 to 8 years.
Oh, wow.
4 to 5 of them at a national and world level, I'd say.
Nice. Dylan, how long have you been shooting?
This is my 7th year this year, started in 2012 after the Olympics.
Okay, no. Well,
So-
I've been shooting for roughly 11 months. And so I'm definitely not going to be the one that carries this podcast, I would think.
Well, Tom, as the newbie, you also mainly focus on field. You are affiliated with a feeder body, but you mainly focus on NFAS.
Yeah, so I shoot NFAS. So for anyone that's not aware of what NFAS is, it's 3D targets at various unmarked distances, generally in woods or similar areas, animal-based targets. I don't know. I tried target archery, and I thought it was quite good. But then I ended up having a go at 3D field, and I've never really looked back. And I think the reasons for that would probably link into the topic of this podcast. I've wondered as well if there's like a personality difference between the type of person that would be attracted to a more unmarked distance 3D outdoors in the woods kind of archery in comparison to someone that would shoot target. What do you guys think?
I think you do find very different personalities in both of them. I find a target archer tends to be quite serious, especially when you get to national, international levels. They do take everything sometimes a bit too seriously, but at the same time, a field archer can be just as serious. But I have found, with the field archers being split across 36 to 40 targets in a wood, they only socialise in their small groups of like 4 or 5. Whereas target archers, you could have a span of 10 targets where they're all just talking in between ends. So I think both have their own sort of very similar personalities, but yet extremely different.
Yeah. What do you think, Connor?
I really enjoy field archery quite a bit. I do shoot target archery because there are, kind of like FIDA, because there are chances in the U.S. to be able to travel abroad.
Uh-huh.
So I do that, but I really enjoy field archery, especially unmarked field archery, like FIDA field style. And I do like 3D, but I'm more of the type of woodsy technicality shooter that you get to experience in field or 3D. It's not just standing in one place shooting a fixed distance. It is having to think of all the elements of side hills, of shadows, of everything like that. So I would say I'm more of a field archer. And to bring up your point, target archers are generally more serious, but you can also be a serious field archer too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think some of the more serious people I've ever met have been field archers who are quite good at the sport. I suppose to be fair, in order to be towards the top end of any sport, you've got to take it quite seriously. Like, I don't think there's any exceptions to that, regardless of what the specifics of the activity is. Like, I've never met one, but I'd imagine someone that's really good at like any, I don't know, like bobsled or even snowboarders, I would imagine, even high-end snowboarders, like you get the snowboarder and the stereotype is that they're complete slackers, but I would imagine that they take it incredibly seriously at the top end.
Especially something like that bobsled or snowboarding is one little mess up and you're physically hurt for a long time.
Yeah, true. I mean, that's I suppose we could say that is one of the benefits of archery from a physical perspective. Like, I would imagine the injury rates are incredibly low.
Yes, you're generally not going to get hurt, and if you do, it's probably a shoulder injury or something that will eventually heal.
I think the worst injury I've seen at archery was someone shooting too short of an arrow and the shot through their fingers. But I think that was more human error than technicality.
Yes, very. I've seen people do that before.
Oh, that's awful. What's the worst injuries you guys have seen in archery, other than that?
My father one time had an arrow blow up while we were shooting FIDA. And I just saw there was just carbon kind of riddled in his arm. But it was still nothing super serious, just had to pluck it out. But that's probably one of the worst ones I've personally seen.
I've seen someone dislocate their bow arm from shooting a stupidly fast bow. So the shot broke and their bow arm kept going forward.
Oh.
Yeah. He was alright, thankfully. He kept shooting as well.
Oh, I think you've mentioned him to me before, but he's the guy that's happened to all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think that really counts. That's his party trick.
Still, I wouldn't like it to happen to me.
It's just the shit he does. Yeah, I mean, I only asked because, obviously, being relatively new to the sport, one of the first things that people would say to you is, like, if your technique's not correct, then you'll hurt your shoulder, or this will happen, or that'll happen, and you'll hurt your shoulder. But I've never actually heard of anyone hurting their shoulder in the sport, and I'm wondering if you guys had.
I've done it 3 times now, personally.
Right.
I've done my bow arming once and my draw arming twice.
Right.
But that's just because I was overboard at the time.
Yes, it can happen. I've seen a lot of people hurt their back or shoulder, but it's generally because they're either doing something unnatural or just really wrong. Like generally, everyone is formed specific to their own selves.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that no one's ever going to be the same, but there are certain things like super short draw length that you're probably going to hurt your shoulders or just the way you set up. And if you feel like something's not right in your form, then there's a pretty good chance that it's not, and you're going to hurt yourself. Like little clicks in your shoulder, pain in your shoulder blades, stuff like that. Because if you think about it, you're probably gonna be able to avoid shoulder problems and back problems.
Yeah, I mean,
conscious about it.
Yeah, I mean, before archery, so my prior sport was powerlifting, and I wasn't particularly good. Like I would come sort of 3rd, 4th in local meets, so like I was competitive, but I was never going to make anything of it. But I think one of the big misconceptions that people have about powerlifting and strength sports in general is that the injury rates are really high. And it's kind of a similar principle in that actually when you get to people who are somewhat competitive, barring freak accidents, the injury rates are quite low. The reason that people tend to get injured doing something like powerlifting or lifting in general is it's because you've got bad form. It's if you do something wrong. Like one of the big things that people are often afraid of is, you can't deadlift because it'll hurt your back, or if you deadlift wrong, it'll hurt your back. I've literally never seen a back injury from deadlift in 12 years of being in the gym and PTing and training and coaching. The injuries people get from deadlift tend to be bicep injury, because you've not got your you've not got your arm in the right place, hamstring injury, but you never see your back go. So I just wondered if the whole shoulder injury thing was the same principle, or whether it was something that really did go on.
It's one of those myths I think a lot of coaches use to try and get people's styles right, because no one wants to injure themselves at the end of the day, especially beginner who's enjoying the sport. Because if you injure yourself, you're probably going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks and you might never come back. I've seen it happen. But the injury rates are extremely low, and obviously extreme injury rates, like where you're never going to come back to the sport ever, even after you've partially healed, is very, very, very low. That just comes to a mental game if you want to come back.
Yeah. But in terms of physical benefits to the sport, I'd be interested in your guys' thoughts, because from coming to this sport again as a relative beginner, I mean, I shoot a relatively heavy bow, so I shoot a longbow. I'm not a compound shooter. 70-pound draw weight at the minute. And I've noticed since shooting the bow and getting it to full draw and using proper form and everything, that I definitely feel like I've got some asymmetric training going on in my upper back. Like, I feel like eventually that will develop into some kind of imbalance, or it would develop into some kind of imbalance if I wasn't doing additional training alongside. So is that something that you guys have experienced, being people that have been shooting for a very long time, or is that something that just doesn't seem to show up even though you would expect it to?
Well, yes, I've noticed that if you do see injuries, they're generally from people with very heavy draw weight bows.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're pulling 50 or 60 pounds, even if you are doing the incorrect form, you're probably going to be okay because it's only 50 or 60 pounds. But once you get up to 65, 70, even 80, some hunters here in the States will actually shoot 80-pound bows. And generally a hunter doesn't know near as much about target archery, and they will develop serious injuries because they're drawing or setting up the wrong way. Now with a longbow, 70 pounds, that's quite a bit, and that could definitely develop some problems, some physical problems if you do not do it right.
Yeah. Do you guys do any sort of additional training to avoid developing imbalances? Because, I mean, obviously coming from the sporting background that I've come from, I still weight train, and so the principle is the same for shooting a longbow as it is for deadlifting with a mixed grip. Because with a mixed grip, for those who don't know, that's one hand is pronated, one hand is supinated. That's going to enable you to lift the bar off the ground a lot easier. And if you do that, eventually you will develop imbalances in your back because your back muscles are flexing in different positions to maintain your upper back stability. But you can iron that out by doing lots of rows and other back training. So I've been continuing doing that since I started shooting. Is that something that is encouraged within the sport? Is that something that other people are doing?
I don't think it's really encouraged, but a lot of people do it. I try to, when I have time to get in the weight room and work on back and shoulders and just biceps, triceps, stuff like that, stuff that pertains to shooting a bow, because you do get imbalances. Kind of like, I'd say my left arm bicep and tricep is probably stronger than my right because I hold up a heavy bow. So I would say that. So I get in there and try to balance it out as much as I can. And I do notice when I am in the weight room lifting and weight training that I am able to pull the bow back, set up, hold for a longer period of time, and I do hold steadier, like way steadier than someone who does not train in the weight room.
I think also the difference is Tom shooting longbow, or for any of the UK listeners, a flat bow, because that's a recognised thing over here.
Yeah.
The difference is the actual physical weight of the bow is a lot lighter for you, whereas a compounder or a freestyler or Olympic style recurve has a metal riser and also normally stabilizers. So I think using your bow arm to steady a heavier weight sort of helps with the imbalance. You don't see as much of an imbalance with it.
That does make sense. I suppose also you've got, with a compound bow, you've got the let off too, so
yeah,
it's probably a little bit kinder to your body in that sense.
Yes, it really is. A lot. Recurve, flat bow, long bow, whatever, any of those types that are not compound is very form specific because you can damage your body so easily. And I've seen people do it, especially with Olympic recurve and people who shoot a lot of arrows per day. If they don't have that form almost perfect for them or just perfect in general, they will develop problems.
So there, obviously the difference is, Connor, you shoot for feet at probably 60 pounds, I'm guessing, maxed out.
Yes.
So your holding weight's going to be what, 18? You shooting a TRX?
Yes, I've cranked it down a little bit, messed with the cables. I've got it down to about 20 to 21 pounds.
Right, so that's a lot different. I shoot a 60 pound TRX 8 and mine's down to 18 pounds holding weight. But then the difference is, Tom, you've got 70 pounds on your fingers. Yeah. And that is a huge difference between obviously you're getting a lot lower speeds because of it being a traditional bow and it being a lot longer, but at the same time, it's a ridiculous amount of weight to be holding for a long time. So I could see why an imbalance would come from a traditional or an Olympic style recurve.
Yeah. I mean, I would say though that again, this is potentially partially my ignorance from being in the sport for not a very long time, but because I've come from a sport where, I mean, I think I said this to you, Dylan. Obviously, it's different muscles used, but when I'm coaching people to deadlift, the first weight that they'll lift will be 135 pounds.
Yeah.
So when you're doing accessory work for that, you'll do things like dumbbell rows, which are relatively similar in motion to drawing a bow-ish. They use very similar muscles, if not the same muscles. And you'll see a regular sort of healthy adult male who's been in the gym for 2-3 years who can comfortably row a 40 kilo dumbbell, which is, we're talking there, that's what, 75 pounds roughly?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I think there is this thing in archery because weight and how heavy it sounds is always going to be relative to your experience. If you're used to talking about numbers in sort of, especially in field archery, traditional field archers will use somewhere between like a 30 and maybe a 55 pound bow standard. So when people hear that people are shooting 60, 70, 80 pound bows, they think, Jesus, that's really heavy. But actually, when you think about the weight that those muscles can actually move comfortably and with safe technique,
Yes.
I think people do have an irrational fear of heavier bows. Like, I'm not... Now, I would 100% agree. You can feel when you're drawing a heavy bow. If you do that wrong, yeah, you're going to get injured. But I do think that with proper technique, I mean, you see people who shoot Asian war archery. Like, you'll see 130-pound dudes drawing 150-pound bows to 32-inch draw with safe technique. And it's quite impressive to watch, but I think that just adds a little bit of perspective onto the whole bow is too heavy, going to injure you thing.
Yes.
I think the bow too heavy also comes from, Tom, you can probably back us up, you started on AGB course, didn't you?
No. I did do an AGB. I've shot AGB though.
Yeah. So as an AGB beginners course, it's normally 4 to 6 weeks, and you're only shooting 18 pounds.
Right.
So when you're off that course and you're told someone shooting a 40-pound bow, it was one of the things where you think, how are they doing it? 18 pounds feels like a lot when you've just started archery.
Yeah.
But over the time, you do build up those muscles, and there is a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, depends how old you are. Like, you know, a lot of juniors will shoot probably a max of 25, 30 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you bump up to like 18 and you're having to shoot 90 meters in like feeder archery, it doesn't really cut it unless you're shooting a very efficient setup.
Yeah. So in terms of building the muscles and things, what sort of physical changes have you guys noticed since you started shooting? Obviously, if it's nearly a decade ago, it's going to be a difficult question to answer, but did you notice any sort of physical benefits in terms of building strength, improving muscle activation, anything like that?
So over the time, I've shot everywhere from recurve to compound and most things in between, including crossbows.
Uh-huh.
And over the time, with different pounders of bows and how they each react, I think the most muscle strength I've built is through compound, but I think that's just because of the 60-pound peak weight that you shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, I've found that it is a lot easier to draw and anger and shoot with other bows once you get into the swing of it.
Yeah.
I think what I've noticed is how much my arms, shoulder, and back has grown in muscle, and how it just helps you do regular everyday things like yard work, lifting heavy things. But it's just, you just notice that after all these years, you're just arms, forearms, shoulders, back has just become really toned, which I can't think of any instance where that is super important in everyday life, but it does help with simple things.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I'd say.
I don't know if it was Coach Dan John that said strength is never a weakness, but there's never a point when being stronger is a bad thing. I think the main thing that I've noticed since I started shooting is that and again, because I shoot 3D field, this may be different in other iterations of archery, but being outdoors and just walking around in the woods is really good cardio. Like the woods that I particularly shoot in is quite hilly, and I know in the US, or I've heard that in the US, the shots tend to be quite short. So you're talking sort of 20, 30, like hunting ranges, 20, 30 yards. UK and generally European field archery tends to be, yeah, we get shorter shots, but I mean, some of them will be 50, 60 yards out, and that means that it's adding up to a pretty big field that you're walking around. So I wear a step counter and I'll do 7,000 steps in a round.
Wow.
I would say, if you're talking about Buttsfield, I think it works out at just under 5 miles or something for both halves.
It's not that far. Might be 3, maybe. But yeah, it's about 7,000. It's about 7,000 steps. Which, when you consider you're just doing that as part of the sport, and it's not a part that you think about, so you don't really notice. Like I think
that's what I was about to say. Is you don't really think about it.
No.
And you just notice that you'll even lose weight doing it.
Yeah.
But yes, American field archery. Are y'all familiar with NFA field archery?
I am, yes.
I'm not. Sorry.
That is our National Field Archery Association, and its format is a max of 80 yards, and I think the closest distance is like 20 feet. But there is a lot of walking. It's 112 arrows each round, and I'll tell you, by the end of that, you're almost exhausted unless you do it every day. If there was a period of time where I would shoot around the field every day, a round or two, and I can tell you the physical benefits, especially in cardio, since you are walking so much, were just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not a sport that you would associate from the side with fitness and with cardio, but it really is something that it sneaks up on you and you don't expect it.
Yes.
I think something else that comes from field, as both of you probably know, is balance. I found I've got a lot more balance in shooting up and down hills and just some strange shots.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've got to have decent core strength to be able to hold a bow steady while shooting down at like 45 degrees. If you didn't, you wouldn't have the stability to make a good shot. And so yeah, your balance and everything is definitely going to improve. And why I think that becomes important is not necessarily in terms of other athletic endeavors, because yeah, you'll get more balance from doing football or American football, which I've just called that just to piss you off, or any other kind of sport like that. Yeah, that will improve your balance more from an athletic perspective. But you've got to think, like, archery is a sport that's accessible for people who are very small up to very old. And I think when you see people who are in their 70s, 80s walking around a field course or shooting at 70-meter faces where you've got to walk to pick your arrows up, like that is a form of physical activity that they can and will engage in, and it's got a ton of benefits for them. Because I mean, just silly things like your grip strength is a really good predictor of your life expectancy, because grip strength is a proxy for various different markers of physical conditioning. And yeah, I think archery is something where it could be accessed by people who wouldn't ordinarily do sport.
Yes, I have noticed that, and it's very beneficial to those people who generally do not participate in sports of any kind. It's because it's almost not even considered a sport, because it's not super physically demanding. And so I think that's what people like, is it's kind of just a hobby that can be turned into a sport, in my opinion. But the general attitude is it's just a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so people aren't thinking that they're actually working out when they shoot around the field or 3D or whatever. They're just having fun with their friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've even seen archery called a strength sport, because of the way you've got to have the fine control over your muscles and the way you've got to really stabilize things. Because one thing that always surprises me is people who don't get the idea of back tension, because again, coming from a background of lifting weights, you learn very, very early on that when you're training your back muscles, you have to pull with your back, not with your arms. And I think even that, being able to get people to understand a little bit more about activating different muscles, even that has a benefit, because then, as you mentioned earlier, Connor, that does have unexpected benefits in everyday life that you wouldn't think of, because it means that you can coordinate your body a bit more. And like, say you've got to pick up a heavy bag of sand, if you know how to actually use your back muscles, that's going to be way easier than if you didn't. And archery could potentially give you that.
Yes, and archery does. It teaches you over time how numerous muscles working together, you can do anything. And just all that combined together, it's like there's no reason you can't pull a 70 or 80 pound bow.
No.
I think also archery brings in a lot of hand-eye coordination, especially on the instinctive / gap shooting that you shoot, Tom. I don't know whether you've seen a massive rise in it from beforehand, but I've heard that a lot of people find they have better hand-eye coordination after they've shot for normally about 6 months.
I could see that. I think that happens with any sport, though. So again, I've done other sports before, and so I'm probably not the best test subject for that. But I would say, because it is a finesse sport, eye-hand coordination is everything. Like, yeah, we can talk about form, and we can talk about getting your correct anchor and making sure you've got the right back tension and everything. But if your eye-hand coordination is off, you're gonna miss.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that could definitely be a factor. Looping back, I think, so earlier, Connor, you mentioned that you preferred field. Would you say that would be fair?
Yes.
What is it about field you prefer?
Well, first of all, I do not like shooting in the wind. I just feel like it's detrimental to your form, and it causes you to do unnatural things. So FIDA just really isn't it for me. So I started shooting 3D at a young age and just kind of got bored of it. And so we found out about field archery, NFA style field archery, and I've shot that for 5 or 6 years, I'd say. And I think it's just the technicality of you don't just have to make that shot. You have to worry about your footing, the cut, especially the cut for European field archery or some of the more challenging courses here in the U.S. It's like all of these things coming together to make the shot. And that's what I like about it. It's not just based off of shooting ability. It's the ability to climb that hill, to control your heart rate, and just everything like that. And then especially for world archery style field where you do have to, I guess, quote unquote, judge it, but generally have a system set up with your bow. I really like that because it's just a lot. It's almost tougher if you think about it compared to FIDA or target archery, and that's what I enjoy about it.
Well, over in America, field archery is a lot bigger than over here. We have, I think, 2 bodies, and that's EFAA, which is the European Field Archery Association, which is our version of your NFAA, and NFAS. Okay. So there are 2 main, and then you've got World Archery mixed in there, but there's not many courses around. But over in America, I think you're talking about challenging courses. Obviously, recently there's been a lot of the total archery challenges going around.
Oh yes, that's kind of designed for hunters for real life hunting situations. Like that is pretty crazy. I've just kind of become acquainted with it the past few weeks because they have a very high social media presence now, and that's some unbelievable stuff right there.
Some of the shots there look ridiculous, and you're climbing up literal mountains to go and shoot them, which I think is really good training for the hunters who are going to go and stalk their prey rather than sit in a tree stand. I think that is a really good off-season practice, so I definitely have respect for that because it's more ethical hunting afterwards.
Yes, that's kind of what ASA archery. It's kind of the United States version of 3D. And it's like the Total Archery Challenge totally surpasses that because it didn't even look like there were any trails, and there were like steep uphills, steep downhills, side hills. And it was just a much better hunting situation / setup than the ASA archery.
That sounds amazing. That sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
Yes, it really does.
Go on, Tom.
Oh, no. I was just going to ask Connor, do you hunt?
Yes, I do. I shoot a lot of indoor, and so that kind of conflicts with hunting. But yes, I do. Whenever I have some off time, I do generally try to get out there and hunt.
Oh, cool.
So what I was going to say is, over in America, there is quite a few types of 3D archeries, and there's OPA, ASA, and IBO.
Yes.
Personally, I don't know the differences, but they're all fairly similar, aren't they?
Yes, they're all on 3D targets, obviously, but like IBO, that is an all unknown organization that used to be very popular. I'd say 15, 20 years ago, it was very popular, and then ASA Archery came around, which they kind of were the same thing, all unknown at first, then they kind of just integrated into known classes, which would bring the target archers over. Because shooting unknown 3D archery, you really have to spend time judging, which I personally do not like to do. But ASA archery is kind of taken over, and then OPA, Organization of Professional Archery, has kind of come in. It's only one shoot a year, but they've kind of come in the last few years, and what they do is it's like kind of like field archery mixed with 3D. So it's 3D animals at longer distances. Like I shot OPA last year. It was on a ski resort, so there were a lot of uphills and downhills. But I think our average shot was like 65 yards on these 3D animals. And what they do is they color in the rings so you know exactly what you're aiming at, in contrast to ASA archery, which they do not color the rings. You have to basically guess or have an educated guess on where the scoring rings are. And ASA is a max of, I think, 50 yards. And at OPA, we were going out to 70 and 80, I'd say.
Wow.
I'd say a lot different to the field over here. Field over here, you can shoot from probably about 2 yards to, I think there's a shot at one of the courses down south, which is 101 yards.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's really cool because you can literally have those two shots next to each other. So you could be shooting 2 yards and then you've got to adjust your entire way of shooting to hit the next target. There's some really well laid courses. It's really good. So Dylan, which would you say you prefer? Would you say you prefer target, or would you say you prefer a more field 3D kind of deal?
I think over here I'm more of a target fan because there's a lot more opportunity in England with target. Field, you don't really have any major competitions. You've got like the national champs and some of the world archery stuff.
But if you've got a day off, you've got a free afternoon, which one are you going to do?
I think target, to be quite honest. I do enjoy shooting just 50 metres. 50 metres is a very enjoyable distance. But I do like the challenge of stuff like 1970.
So what is it? I was hoping you were going to say that because then we've got differences. What is it that draws you to target, would you say?
I think it's a little bit of nostalgia because I started in target, so it's always got that bit of my heart. I've been doing it a lot. I've been doing it 3 years longer than field. And I've made some of my best friends through target.
Right.
But at the same time, I do enjoy it because I know the distances. I don't have to worry about missing and breaking an arrow if I do something completely stupid like misjudged by 5 yards. And I just feel like it's a bit more open. I always have a bit more of a laugh because there's a lot more people at a target competition than field. Especially you've normally 4 people do a target and there's like, 10 targets could socialise into one group at some point.
Yeah, I like that. So I think that both of you there have kind of summed up a lot of the sort of mental benefits of the game, because obviously, Dylan, you just said there, target, you've got a massive social group because you could be on a shooting line with, I mean, what's the biggest shooting line you've been on? Both of you.
Probably Nemes. There was 140 targets, I think. Over 100 targets.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Neem is a pretty big one. Vegas is also a very, very big one. I kind of think of Neem as the Vegas of Europe. That's what it reminds me of. Even though Vegas is a lot bigger with a lot more shooters, it just kind of reminds me of Vegas when I'm shooting in Neem. But yes, that's probably some of the largest ones, which you'll always get that with indoor because in theory, it is easier to shoot indoor, and it doesn't take, I don't want to say as much skill, but as much preparation. When you're just shooting at 20 yards indoor, you don't have a whole lot to worry about.
Yeah.
Whereas target archery and field archery, you have to worry about the weather, the wind, just being out in nature. and indoor you just don't have that.
Yeah. So I think that's so you got the target thing. You've got a massive social aspect to it, and I think that's. I mean, we all know that that's hugely important for mental health and mental well-being. Like your ability to regularly socialize with other human beings is going to be a massive determinant factor in how well you get on in your head. But then, as Connor mentioned, I think there's something about challenging yourself and being able to overcome those challenges that's equally rewarding. And I think that it just illustrates that regardless of what kind of archery you were to choose, there's going to be some psychological benefit to that.
Yes. And I like FIDA or target archery because as Dylan said, you do get to meet a lot more people because like in field you have generally a group of 3 or 4, and that's the only people you're going to talk to all day.
Yeah.
Whereas in FIDA there's people all around. You're shooting next to people on different bales. You're talking to them. You're all sitting back together and talking under the tent. And I don't know. I feel like you don't have to think as much for FIDA, so you can be more social and talk to people because you don't have to think of the cut or guess the distance or anything like that. You're just shooting arrows at a 50-meter target. I think the only thing that really turns me off of FIDA is really the aspect of wind, which I've never really been a wind shooter. I'm more conscious and methodical in my shot, which that's the only thing. Everything else I completely agree with Dylan because it is a lot of fun if you just get a calm day and you're just able to just shoot and not think about anything else. It is a lot of fun.
It does, especially big. For the whole wind thing, that's one of the reasons I like shooting heavy bows. So like if I'm shooting a 700 grain arrow, like unless it's really bad wind, like it's going straight anyway. So it's one of those benefits.
I think there's the socialization of archery as well, stuff like Vegas and Nîmes. With that huge group of people, you're bound to find someone you're going to get on with. Whereas a few times you can be put in a group of 4 people and you might not be massive fans of them. They might just not be the type of person you'd talk to normally.
Yes.
Whereas with FIDA, if you're on target with someone you don't really want to talk to, or if you've had bad experiences with, you can walk off and talk to someone that you know well, or someone that you want to talk to.
Yeah.
Yes, you're just not confined with those 3 or 4 other people all day.
Yeah.
And that's what I do like. It's because I mean it happens. We all get on targets that we just aren't very fond of the people on there, and if you're shooting fields, you have to be with them all day.
Yeah.
But if you're shooting FIDA, you can go see all your other buddies, which I really like. Because a lot of my great friendships have developed from FIDA because of that social aspect. And that's what I enjoy about it.
It's really cool. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but in the UK, there seems to be a sort of type of person, not all, but that makes up the majority of field archers, which tend to be the more loner type as well anyway. Like within the field club that I shoot, there are a lot of people that will shoot alone, myself included. Like I'll go to the woods and I'll spend 2 hours there and I'll shoot by myself, and that's fine. Like that's what I enjoy doing. And I don't know whether that also sort of then would reduce the sociability aspect for people who are looking for that out of a sport, because if I'm put into a group of 4 people, I'm the type of person that will talk to all of them, even though I do like my own space. But I have been in groups of people where nobody's basically said a word for an entire 6-hour day. And if you're looking for a sport that's very sociable, that would really put you off.
Yes, I agree with that. But then I'm like you. I can go shoot a field round by myself, and I feel like you almost get more out of it because you're by yourself. You're not talking to anyone else. You can just shoot a target as long as you want, practice, do whatever, and just nobody's interrupting your thinking, especially on a field round. If you're trying to figure something out, figuring out form, judging, whatever, it really helps if you are alone.
It's one of the reasons why I like the sport as well. So the reason that I shot target like 3 times, then I found field and I've never been back to target. And I think 2 of the main reasons are, first of all, it's outdoors, and I really like being outdoors. I'm one of the few people on our course, at least, that shot all through the winter, so we had a particularly nasty winter last year. It was very cold. There was a lot of snow. It rained a lot, and like I was still shooting at least 2-3 times a week, which is my usual shooting frequency anyway. Myself and the guy that I usually shoot with, and I just enjoy being outdoors. And I think with field, there's an indoor season, and I do get what you're saying with the whole. You don't have to think about it so much, and you can socialize. But for me, that being outdoors is like a big part of wanting to do the sport. I think it's very beneficial for you. And
Yes, I enjoy that.
and the other one is I quite like being by myself sometimes. Like I quite like having that 2 hours where I'm there. And if I've got something that I'm trying to think about, something I'm trying to work out, something that's on my mind, being by myself in the woods and just shooting, first of all, every time you take a shot, you have to be like iron mind. Like you have to only think about that arrow and what you're trying to do with it. Because if you get distracted, you're going to miss. And I think that's useful. But also then you've got that period where you're by yourself and you're able to think through these things. I think that's really useful too.
It's a great stress reliever, in my opinion, to just be out there alone, nobody else, and just with nature shooting. And that's what I get from field. Is if I'm having a hard day or whatever, I'll go and shoot around the field, and just it all feels better after that.
So I personally use archery as a stress reliever during my GCSEs. I don't know what the equivalent is in America, but it's the exams you take here when you're 15, 16-ish, sort of your end of secondary school exams. So over here, I use my archery as just a pure stress reliever during that time because I was still shooting on the national level. So that still sort of took precedent, but I still try to focus on my GCSEs. But I think the splitting my mind into two separate entities basically really helped keep my stress down.
Yeah, it's
I
good.
totally agree with that. We have a similar test, except we would have one. I guess y'all call it secondary school. We would have one every year of that we were in secondary school to move on to the next grade level, which
Right.
that was semi-stressful. Or semester finals. That's another one that you just get out and shoot and stop thinking about it.
Yeah, so I can't remember my exams. But yeah, it's the same principle when I'm at work. Like it's really nice to go somewhere where you're out in nature and in the woods because I mean, first of all, you don't have phone signal most of the time. So the job that I have, I'm on call all the time. I do one of these made-up internet jobs where I do this kind of thing full time, and that means that I'm on call all the time because there's always emails, there's always social media, there's always something that I could and should be responding to, and it's nice to be able to go out and just switch all that shit off and just sort of compartmentalize. It's like, right, that doesn't come into the field. And you could say the same for any sport realistically, I suppose. But I never got that out of powerlifting because when you're in the gym, you've got your phone with you all the time. And people say, oh, you shouldn't be on your phone when you're in the gym. But if you're doing 6 sets of 2 and you're having 4-minute rests in between, like that's a lot of time just sat looking at the floor. So you do end up on your phone all the time and you end up working, and it's nice to have that break from it.
I totally agree with that. If I ever find myself in the gym, especially working out with someone else, there is a lot of downtime, and you're going to be on your phone. Whereas in field archery, the downtime is really not there, especially if you're shooting by yourself. Is it's all go, no stop.
That is something I prefer over target archery. Is there's not a lot of downtime in field. Normally you'll shoot your shot and then someone else will go up, but you'll be talking to someone else. You won't think, oh, I'll just play on my phone for a bit. Whereas target archery, especially outdoors, you have 4 minutes to shoot 6 arrows. So you shoot yours, and then you've got to wait 4 minutes for the next slot to go and shoot theirs. And a lot of the time I will find myself sat playing on my phone instead of thinking of mental game and just relaxing. I'll be looking up something or trying to figure something out. I'll be on my phone.
That brings up a good point. When I'm shooting target archery, like you said, 4 minutes, 6 arrows, I will find myself, if I shoot a really good end, I'll be happy and talking to everyone. But if I shoot a really bad end, and then have to wait 4 more minutes, which you have to score. So probably 10 minutes, I'd say, at least for USA archery, is you're like kind of brewing about that end. That's what I find myself doing. And I get upset because I have to wait 10 more minutes to shoot 6 more arrows to hopefully do better and figure out what was wrong. Whereas in field archery, you get to go right to the next target and just, in theory, kind of just throw the last one away and just focus on the next one.
I know what you're talking about with having to wait. It is a horrible thing. You shoot a really terrible end, but you know what you're doing. So the next end, you instantly wanted to correct it, but you've got to wait that time period.
Yeah.
And it is a huge mental blocker, especially if there's like an equipment failure. You've got to wait another 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Someone has to call a judge because they put a wrong arrow value down. That's another minute. And things slowly build up, and there's been ends where we've waited 20 minutes to shoot the next end. And all during that time, your body's cooling down firstly, which doesn't help. And your mind's just running through every mistake you've made. And from a mental point of view, that is hugely draining.
Mm-hmm. I suppose it's quite good to develop the ability to deal with that, though. Like you guys have both competed at high level for a long time. Like you must have, have you become more resilient to that?
Massively. I remember when I started shooting nationally with compound, I'd put a 7 in, and I'd beat myself about it all day. Now if I put a 7 in, I laugh it off and just think, it was me, or it was the wind, or I'd misset my sight. I don't try to beat myself up anymore.
I think archery totally helps you deal with stress and adversity. And I remember the first time I was ever on a final stage, so let's say in Nîmes. It was like the scariest experience of your life. And your knees are shaking, you just don't even know what to think. And then as you continue to do it, it gets better, and then you find out in real life, regular everyday things that you just don't get stressed out by much, because most people wouldn't think of archery as a stressful sport, but when you want something so bad and it's time to do that, it gets very stressful and you put a lot of pressure on yourself, which makes everyday life way easier, in my opinion.
So talking about finals fields, my first ever final was a gold medal match that was live streamed on Facebook. And I remember I was stood in the tunnel about to go out and I was bricking it. I was stood there thinking everything is going to go wrong. Because at the time, I think I was ranked 9th in the country. I had rank 11th, I think it was rank 16th versus 1, 2, and 3. And as the first ever match I'd shot as gold medal and the first ever televised match I'd shot, I was massively terrified. And I remember at the end of that match, we'd won, I think it was by 3 or 4 points, and I'd never been more relieved. And I don't think I've ever been stressed about a medal match since. Because I figured if I can shoot that, I can shoot anything.
Yes, that's the way I see it. And I remember I used to get stressed out over qualification rounds. And once you made your first finals match of any kind, or a shoot-off or whatever, it just kind of takes all that stress away from qualifications or even preliminary matches against lower-ranked people. You just don't even think about it.
I can only imagine. I mean, I still get stressed going to little local competitions where you win a little tin medal. So yeah, I can imagine that really helps. I mean, I think it is just another extension of just putting yourself out of your comfort zone as well. I mean, as I say, I've never competed at any high level, but you get the same benefits from other things. I just think with archery, the way that it plays itself out, it's good because there is only you that can succeed on that. Like, so let's say you're going to compete at a high level in a team sport. You can play to the best of your ability, and if your team lets you down, then you're not going to win. Whereas with archery, it's on you, and I think
everything is on you. You can't blame anyone for what happens.
Yeah, I think that's quite empowering. Like it can be really nerve-wracking and it can make you really scared, but at the same time, it makes you feel a bit more empowered because you're in control of whether you win or not. And then I guess if you don't, you can improve. Like hopefully you know what it is that you weren't doing right, and you can correct that. And again, I would imagine that bleeds out into the rest of your life too.
Yes, and another thing people don't really think about. I don't know how much y'all have traveled for archery or just other things, but when I come to Europe to shoot, it's like a whole nother world. Everyone speaks a different language. Everything's different. Everything looks different. So it kind of teaches you about real life, because without archery, I probably wouldn't travel anywhere. But when you get in those situations that you just have to learn about real life situations and how to fix problems, like language barrier is a big one. I've been in I'd say France, where we don't speak the same language, and most people do speak English, but you do run into people like at cafes and stuff like that who do not, and you have to just figure that out. One time I was trying to order something from a cafe of some sort, and they didn't speak English, so I couldn't convey what I wanted. So I downloaded Google Translate real quick, and that's how I just kind of navigated myself through it. It just teaches you to solve real world problems.
I think that's what I was worried about in Nîmes, is that I'd be on a target with 3 other people that didn't speak English and didn't understand anything I said.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the target we had in Nîmes was me, you, and 2 other lads that did speak English.
Yeah. That's like
so it worked out pretty well.
I think one of the hardest things is when someone who doesn't speak your own language, like, has a problem with an arrow call or a question with a scorecard or something like that, and you're just like, dude, I don't know what you're saying to me, because I shot with a guy, I want to say he was from Turkey or something like that, in Nîmes last year, and there were quite a few different arrow calls that we just didn't agree on, and it was kind of tough to navigate through at first, because we didn't speak any of the same language at all. Generally, like, you can understand what someone is saying even if they don't speak your language. But with this, it was like I had no clue whatsoever what he was saying.
How did you deal with that?
I think I was lucky enough to have someone on my target, one of the other 2 guys, that either knew his language or could convey what he was saying, because I'm like, man, I have no clue what you're saying. And then we were both kind of getting frustrated because he wanted something and I didn't know what he wanted.
Yeah.
I think going back to the stress bit, though, I've got a little sheet, and I found a quote. Sadly, I couldn't find who it was by, but it was: an archer's greatest opponent is himself. Identifying what to improve and setting clear goals is easy, and progression breeds confidence. And I think that is a very true quote, that everyone is only ever against themselves. You should never think about what someone else is doing.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can't influence it. It's not like when you're, I don't know, doing Greco-Roman wrestling or something, where you can make the other person perform worse as well as you can perform better. Like, all you can do is you can perform better for yourself, and then just hope it works out.
Yeah,
yes, I find that a lot of times in elimination matches, like OR rounds. I'll see, like, the guy next to me shooting 149s, 150s, whatever. It's like, it's not good to think about that when you know that y'all are going to meet up in a match. It's like, you just don't want to think about that. You just have to focus on the match you're in and just deal with it when you get there, you know?
Well, that's interesting. So you'd have multiple rounds on the same day, and obviously you'd be aware of the scores the other person's put in on the way.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I think our world team trials was pretty tough, because what we did is we shot a qualification round. They cut top 8, some weird point system by USA Archery. And I don't know, we kind of all knew each other because the top 8 were kind of all friends. And I think we were shooting round robin matches, where, I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. Everyone shoots against each other and they count up points. And it was kind of tough because there were just eight targets, and we were all shooting against each other, or we would shoot against each other at one point. And you would see someone shoot a 149, 148, or almost a 150 or whatever. And it was kind of hard to think about, knowing that you have to shoot against that person later.
Yeah, I can imagine that's really nerve-wracking.
I'll say there's an explanation of matches for people who don't know. On average in World Archery, they'll take either top 64, top 32, depending on the amount of injuries. Top goes against bottom, obviously winner progresses down to the semi-finals, where there's 2 matches. The winner of each match goes into gold, the loser of each match goes into the bronze, and then obviously those matches are shot.
Yes. I think it's a huge load off of your mind when you do make it to a semifinal match, because you're going to be shooting for a medal either way. Of course, you want it to be gold, but if you lose that semifinal match, it's not the end of the world because you will get another chance to shoot for a medal.
I think it's sort of that back net that everyone uses just to relax a little bit, which normally makes them shoot better.
Yes.
I'm in the semi-finals, I'm in a medal match, no matter what happens here, I'll just shoot my best. And normally their best, when they're relaxed, is 147, 148, 149, maybe even a 150.
Yes.
What's the most nerve-wracking arrow you've ever shot?
Oh.
So I think I've talked about this with you before, Tom, but over in England we have different rounds. We have imperial rounds, which are shot at yards, and they're only specific to the UK. But at Worcester is a 5-spot with X5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's basically similar to your NFAA indoor round.
Yes.
And in this county there's been one archer before this day that had shot a 600, and he was shooting opposite me. And I'd shot a 300 in the morning, and on the last arrow was on 295 out of 295. So I was stood there, and I must have came up 3 or 4 times, just shaking my way out of the middle every single time. And on that day, there was 2 people who shot 600s, and it was me and the other person he was coaching at the time. So all 3 of us who'd ever shot 600s were there, and it was my proudest moment in archery, but it was also the most nerve-wracking.
Jesus.
I understand that. I've had a few moments of just horrible shaking, fear inside. I'll say one of the worst ones, I guess the worst slash best, is we were shooting a team final at World Field last year, and it came down to the last target. And I'm sure y'all are familiar with World Field. There's no electronics. You can't have a rangefinder, an inclinometer, or anything like that. And we had to guess the cut of this target at 60 meters. And it was televised and everything. It was a gold medal world championship match. And as the compound, you're kind of expected to hit the dot. I just had no clue. And so I kind of calculated everything in my head, the cosine of the distance of the cut. And it was 38 degrees uphill at 60 meters. And I pulled up there and just tried my best and shot, shaking really bad, ended up smoking the X. But that was one of the worst times I've had. And then just the day previous to that, I made the individual gold medal match too there, but I had to shoot off in the semifinal with another kid, and that was pretty nerve-wracking for that because I really wanted to be in the gold medal match, not the bronze. But those were probably 2 that just kind of hit off the top of my head that I can remember.
Yeah, you can do that. Either of those, you can do them. You can do anything at that point.
Yes.
Like, you become indestructible. How long did it take you before you realized you were really good at the sport?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it, to be honest, because there's always someone that's going to be better, and I just kind of strive to beat them and then go on to the next person and on to the next person.
All right, to get past the humility, when was the first time you thought, actually, yeah, I could do this competitively, like I could do all right in this?
Probably when I noticed that most of my scores, like at a state or national level, were higher than the average, I would say, than the local average. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, maybe I'm a little better than most people. Maybe I should take this a little further type deal.
Yeah. How long did it take to get there?
I've never really told myself, hey, man, you're really good at this.
No.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to that point?
2 or 3 years, I'd say.
Yeah. What have you done?
So I took a break from target in 2014 to 2016, and during that as you know, there's nothing really major over here where you could do that at a high level. So I came back into target in 2016 with compound, first time I ever shot it, and maybe January, February in 2017, I just thought my club was having a coaching day. I went, I'll go to it, and it was an ex-Paralympic coach, and she said to us, oh, you've got potential. And it's sort of, I'm always make the joke that it spiraled out of control into a money pit there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've had upgrade all my gear because I just had very basic stuff that was just for a bit of fun, and it obviously gets upgraded more and more the better you get. And then I started travelling down Little Shore, which is the head of Archery GB, because I was invited to do the National Talent Development Programme or something like that. So I was with the compound coach of GB squad.
Oh, wow.
I think it was once every 4 months for a year. So I got a little bit out of it, and then I started paying, I think it was 25 quid a week for coaching off a GB squad member, and it sort of just went from there. And then I started to compete nationally. My first ever junior national outdoor champs, I came fourth both days, which was last year, and then this year I came second both days.
Okay.
So you do see the progression yourself, and it's nice to see it. I think it's good to see the progression. I'm starting to see that I could get hopefully quite far in this.
It's like you see a light at the end of the tunnel that you know that you can do this, and you can do it well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. So how long had it been? Well, I suppose it's difficult for you because you changed styles, but I suppose if you can go from when you started archery, how long was it before you started realising that actually you were someone that could maybe do something with the sport?
I'll do a bit of a timeline. I started in 2012. To 2012, 2013, I shot Olympic recurve, and then 2013, probably midway through 2014, I shot like county level longbow, which is sort of when I started to think I could be quite good at this. I was winning 99% of the competitions I was entering, and then I took the break to field where there wasn't ever anyone really in my categories when I was shooting, so it was the gold medal of every event because it was either one or two of us. So I never really took that quite seriously. I took that as a bit of a walk around the woods. And then I came back to Target and I started compound. The first time I ever shot a compound, I went to a friend's to get it set up in Durham. Again, a member of the field club, both me and Tom are at. And I shot his fence because he gave us a trigger, and being the novice compound, wrapped my thumb around the trigger, or close to it, drew back, misfire, shot his fence. So I stood there head in hands going, I'm never going to be good at this. So he shot all through the winter. Outdoor season came. I did the coaching, and it sort of went up from there. Started doing county level competitions, winning quite a lot of them, losing maybe one or two out of every four I ended, and then started going national, winning or coming first, second, or third at them, and then I went international at Nîmes start of this year, and that was the real that leveled me out quite a bit. Because I went and I think I was 3 points off the cut, which really, I felt like I was shooting all right before I went, but that huge international stage is a real shocker. It bumped us down a peg from where I thought I was, which I needed. It was a good, it leveled me back out. So since January, I've been training a lot more to get where I am now.
Yeah. I totally understand that. It's kind of like a wake-up call, in my opinion, when you go to a huge international event like that and just see the talent that is there and the skill that other people have, and then you want it, and so you make it your goal to become what they are.
Yeah, I think I was sat in the stands watching. I think it was either Mike Schlosser or Stefan Hansen, whoever shot a 600 at Nîmes. And I was sat there with my binoculars going, oh look, another 10, thinking one day that I want that to be me.
Mm-hmm.
You watch someone shoot a high 595 or a 600 and you go, that's what I'm aspiring to be.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think for someone who is quite young entering into a sporting environment, I think that sounds like quite a good environment to enter into. I think there are some sports where the environment isn't necessarily as positive as it could be for a younger person, and I think that sounds really quite a good thing for you, if that makes sense. It sounds like the environment was quite nurturing, but at the same time it was still able to give you that knock you down a peg to stop you getting a bit too big for your boots.
Yeah.
Because I think when you get into a lot of sports, I mean, around here the sport is football or soccer for the other people. And with that, you're playing against kids who are all in the same league as you, and you just play the same kids over and over and over again. And unless you get professional, which people seem to forget when you're an amateur footballer, you can be fooled into thinking you're really good. And I knew a lot of kids growing up who were just arseholes because they were quite good at football, and they never really grew out of that, and they just grew up to be arseholes. Whereas when you do a more individual sport that allows you to travel, so boxing, mixed martial arts, or any martial arts really, or something that's individual like archery, where you're traveling and you're seeing individuals who are just still essentially amateurs like yourself, who are so much better than you. I think it affords you a really good opportunity to develop as a person.
Yeah, it is. Archery, I think, is probably one of the best sports for that because you meet any archer and they will most likely help you the best way they can. And even at an international level, I remember I think it was with, I can't remember his name now, one of the American lot, but he's shot internationally for many, many years. But he stopped and had a conversation with me, but for like 20, 25 minutes. And it's the point where you go, if you went and talked to someone famous in football, what's the likelihood they'd stop and talk to you for half an hour?
Yeah.
Just about basically nothing. It was just a chat.
Yeah. I mean, you get that in a lot of niche sports. Because I would say, would you guys agree that archery is still quite a niche sport? It is in the UK at least.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's a massive sport to be in most places in the world, to be fair.
But in the US, Connor.
That's what I think.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, so I think it's, because it is a niche sport, it's quite exciting when you meet someone else that does it. And I mean, I was amazed since I've started archery to find the number of people who also shoot. Like, there's way more archers than I thought there were. It's almost like a little secret society. But yeah, I mean, it was the same in powerlifting. Like, if you go to the gym and you can see someone else who is clearly a competitive powerlifter, you'll probably just become friends. Like, you'll talk to each other because you've got this niche thing that not many people do. And so, to be honest, not many people understand. You've got this thing in common, and I don't know, would you say archery is similar to that? Or just because, I mean, the couple of times that I've met other people who do archery, we've had like 10, 15-minute conversations just about the sport, and it's almost like these people are excited to talk about the thing that they do because they don't get the opportunity to do it very often.
I definitely agree with that. If you ever meet another archer that you haven't met before and you start talking about archery, they go, wait, you're an archer as well? And then there's just this light that goes on in their head where they're just excited to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about themselves. They're not just talking at someone who's just listening going, yeah, sure, They've got someone who will actually respond.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. When someone is of your same skill level and you understand what they're talking about, understand the problems they're having or the triumphs they've had. It's just you understand it more on a personal level than someone who either doesn't understand what you're doing or isn't of the same skill level or whatever. And that's how a lot of friendships start off in archery, at least, is you're somewhat similar in that aspect.
I think, though, Tom, you were saying about it being basically a secret society over here. It did amaze me how many people do archery. And going to an international event like Nîmes or Vegas last year this year had, what was it, something like 3,600 archers or something? Something stupid like that shooting. But if you think you've got that many archers shooting at just one competition that isn't, it's open to everyone, but not everyone has the chance to go. That's just a select few. It just shows you how big the sport is.
Yeah, I mean, I was amazed when I went to 3D Nationals earlier this year in the UK. And there was like a few hundred people there. And I was like, wow, like, this is a massive field and there is a hell of a lot of archers here. Like, I didn't know all of these people even existed. Because before I tried 3D archery, which I only found out about by mistake, I'd literally never even heard of it. Like, I would never have imagined that anywhere in the UK you could wander around in the woods and shoot foam animals, let alone there being 3 places within half an hour of my house. Like, that's just insanity. But it's a secret society of just these people who, at least in the UK, a lot of them are the type of people that wouldn't ordinarily do sport. They're the type of people that wouldn't ordinarily have the confidence to go and do something competitively. But they've found this niche thing that's actually more popular than you'd think, and they're getting a ton of benefit from it. I think it's really cool.
I was talking to someone who has a son with additional needs, and she said that it is one of the most welcoming sports, and it's also on the list of the sports that are best for people with additional needs, because especially those on the autism spectrum, it is a sport of repetition. So it is doing the same thing over and over again, and you'll find that it is really good for them. I know quite a few people who do it and they find that it just helps them, which I think is a great thing as well, especially from a mental point of view. To have somewhere where they can go and socialise in a friendly environment, but also have somewhere to exercise without being sort of off on their own, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's almost meditative.
Yeah. I think it does bring in a huge level of relaxation and just there's you don't have to put pressure on it. You can if you want to be competitive, you can go to the international top of the world level where you're shooting against people who've been shooting for 30 years, longer than some people have been born who are doing the sport. Or you can stay you can go and shoot at your club 2 nights a week and just socialise, have a bit of fun and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people at our club that would never do a competition.
Yeah, definitely.
It's probably, would you say it's most? I don't have access to that data.
So the club's 140 members. You maybe get. I think the most I've seen in the competition is 25, 30 of our club. But it depends. It depends. Obviously, some people work over weekends. Some people just don't fancy it. Some people aren't confident enough. Mm-hmm. It all depends on the person. You get out of this sport what you put into it, which I think's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it's good that you've got the option to participate as well, because I'm a really competitive person. So whatever sport, I mean, I've scored everything that I've done since I picked up a bow, and I've always the idea was right, I'll get good at this and I'll see if I can do competitions. But there are a lot of people who aren't like that, and it's nice that there are sports out there where you can just not.
Yeah, it's sports where if you want to just sort of mill about and just do it maybe once a month, 2 times a month. You can just you wander into the woods, shoot some foam animals, pay your fees and leave again. You might not even see another person. It might just be you alone in the woods with your thoughts, with your bow, having a bit of a laugh, having some fun. Maybe take a few friends along that shoot as well. Or you can go to the international stage and just try and be your best and try and be the best in the world.
Well, I might get to the international stage. You never know. I'll try. Right, gents, I'm afraid I'm running out of time.
Well, we'll wrap it up then. I think we've covered most of the points. There's just one more I do want to cover, and it's in the list I sent out with you, and it is based on a physical thing that I think that Arizona State University covered, and it is the estimated calorie usage of the Olympics. And it's just a final chart I wanted to finish with. I'll include it in the video. I'll edit it in so everyone else can see. And it is the estimated calorie usage in the Olympics. And it's winning the Olympic gold compared with doing 10 minutes of the non-sports, which are the blue sections. And this includes the training, warm-up and post-event burn. And archery is the second most physically demanding sport in the Olympics. So what do you think of that? Would you expect it to be the second most, or would you expect it to be less than a lot of the other ones?
Well, I mean, I'll let Colin answer. I'll let you go first.
I would honestly think that it wouldn't be one of the most demanding sports, just in my opinion, because there are quite a few other sports in the Olympics that it almost becomes more of a lifestyle, I would think. Like daily diet, daily lifting, daily practice of that sport. But I don't know, I never really thought about it. I guess they kind of are similar, archery and other physically demanding sports. But I don't know. What was the number one physically demanding sport in the Olympics? The
number one is the women's marathon, who they estimated burn about 1,830 calories. Archery is at 1,084. And then below that is the 1,500 meters, which is men's, which is about 260, which is a huge jump of nearly 750 calories between second and third, which is just, I think it's insane how much archery burns.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, because I look at data and stuff all the time. So that chart's specifically looking at the competition burn. So that doesn't take into account training. So it's not really a commentary on the sport as a lifestyle. As you mentioned, Connor, it's the sport as a performance. So, for example, that chart would only count if you're looking at the 100-meter sprint. It would look at the number of calories burned to get from the blocks to the 100-meter line. Like, it doesn't count it doesn't count the weekly training that's gone into that. So I would say it's a little bit misleading in that sense, but it's still the aspect of the sport that is worthy of consideration. I mean, how many arrows do you shoot in an Olympic round?
You have
72.
72 was a qualification, and then so the 64th match is 15. Then your 30 seconds. So hold on, 72, your 64th, then your 30 seconds, 16ths, 8ths, quarters, semis, and finals. So that is.
But the actual round itself, 72 arrows, yeah?
Yeah, 72 for qualifications.
Yes, and eliminations are generally just what you make of it.
Qualifications up to the so qualifications, so you collect your 72 and you collect all of your arrows up to the finals match.
Yeah, so 72 arrows, walking 70 meters to collect them and then walking back, you're talking 10,000 in 80 meters, so it's 10 kilometers of walking in a 70 meter round of 72 arrows, not counting the little wandering around you do before you shoot your arrow on the line and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a 10k event. Like, that's way further than almost any other Olympic event apart from the marathon. So it's not that surprising when you think of it in those terms. So if you were someone who was shooting a 70 meter round, 3 times a week, like, all of a sudden you're basically an endurance athlete. And I think that makes perfect sense. Like, as I say, that's not. There are other ways to measure a sport's physicality than calorie burn. Because Olympic lifting, for example, incredibly difficult sport, but you barely burn any calories. But in terms of energy output, and if you're looking for a sport that's going to increase that, I mean, hell, you can do a lot worse than walking 10k a few times a week.
To bring back on the amount of arrows shot as well, I've got a friend who's training on the the GB team at the moment, who once shot 28 dozen arrows in a day.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know whether that was blank bailing or 70 metres, but either way, that is a lot of muscle burn. And if you're walking 70 metres for 28 dozen arrows, that's a lot.
That's
a ton.
A hell of a lot. That's an ultra marathon.
So
even
what's
with
that?
Blank bail.
I'd say so a 1440, which is a 12 dozen round. So that's doing basically 2 1440s and it's basically a 720 as well, which is ridiculous to do in one day. And that was mixed with other things that she was doing as well, like work.
Yeah, that would leave you ruined. The most arrows I've shot in a day is probably around the 200 mark, which is pretty low arrow volume, I would imagine, compared to you guys. But yeah, that leaves me sore. Again, I shoot a relatively heavy bow, but after that, I'm sore. Like, it's not a sport that you can discount the physical nature of it.
200 is quite a bit. I think probably one of the most I've ever done. I would say 300 to 400, which is basically being out there all day, shooting and walking back and forth, just no breaks really. But I'd say that's probably the most.
So there you go.
So then we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for both of you for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
No worries, dude. Thank you very much.
So hopefully we'll see you again another point.
I would imagine so. But yeah, cheers for having me on, dude. It's been fun.
No worries.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you over the internet, Connor.
Yes, sir. You too.
Right, and everyone stay tuned for the next one, which should hopefully be out next week or the week after.
Awesome.
Right. Excellent. See you later.
Later, dude.
Bye-bye.